Hey guys, what's up? So we're back at it, right? And it says here we're going to be looking at percentage change, okay? And let's look at this. It says if a quantity is increased or decreased by X percent of itself, then the new percentage is 100 plus or minus X percent of itself. So what does this really mean? It sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? But the best way to do it is just look at an example right away. All right, guys. So, and I'm going to give you an example before we look at this one. Let's say you have $1,000, right? And you have $1,000 and you put it in the bank, and this amount increased by 10%, right? Then to find how much it increased by, right? You could multiply the $1,000 by 10% and then add it to the 1,000, right? So you'd say 1,000 times 10%, right? And you'd end up with $100, and then you add that to the 1,000, right? So you'd get 1,000 plus 100, right? So you get 1,100, right? 1,100. That's what you should get as the answer. Cool? Because your $1,000 that you had increased by 10%. So basically though, what this is saying that if a quantity is increased or decreased by X percent of itself, then the new percentage is 100 plus or minus X percent of itself. It's trying to say instead of finding the $100, the 10% that it increased by, all you had to do was multiply this $1,000 that you had that increased by 10% by 100 plus 10%, which is 110%, right? 110 over 100 of itself, right? So if you multiply this 1,000 by 110 over 100, you'd get 0 to cancel 0. So these two here cancel, and you get 10 times 110, which is 1,100, right? So that's basically the concept here, guys. You can use this multiplication factor here, this 110 over 100, to multiply it by itself to increase the amount. So let's look at this example here. And it says an item is sold at 120% of the cost price. 120% of the cost price. And it is sold for $6,000. Find the cost price. Okay. All right. So let's just write this out. Okay. Let's write this out. The cost price. Okay. It's sold at 120% of the cost price. So the cost price multiplied by 120% would be 120 over 100, right? And when you multiply the cost price by the 120%, it's equal to 6,000, right? That's how much it was sold for. So we need to find the cost price, okay? So in order to find this cost price, what we have to do is we have to say the cost price is equal to 6,000, and then this here we're going to divide the right side by this multiplication factor. So we're going to end up with 6,000 divided by 120 over 100, right? So this would actually end up being 6,000, because you're going to flip the right side, you're going to end up with multiplied by 100 over 120. Cool? Then this 0 cancels this 0. 12 can go into 6,000 how many times? I think 500 times, right? Right. 12 can go into 6,500 times. Cool. 12 can go into 6,500 times, and we end up with 10 times 500, which is 5,000. So 5,000 is equal to the cost price. Cool. So we found the cost price, which is equal to 5,000. All right. So that's basically what this concept is about, guys. If they tell you that an item is 120% of itself, then all you have to do is multiply that by the 120 over 100, and you will find what the item is, right? So I'll give you some other examples, okay? I think this is a good example. And guys, you have to just sit and think things out. You have to use arithmetic and think it out. In this case, it says an item is sold at 120% of the cost price. So that's this here. So 120% of the cost price is equal to the 6,000 it was sold for, which is the selling price, right? So in order to find the cost price, we have to make the cost price a subject of the formula, right? So I think this is a good introduction to making something the subject of the formula and finding out what you need to find out based on what the question asks you. Okay? So let's look at two more examples. All right? Awesome, guys. So we're going to look at some more questions, and I just left this up here. To read the question properly, then find the answer using basic arithmetic. So that's how we're going to deal with these questions. All right? Just read the question properly, then find the answer using basic arithmetic. So think about the question, guys. Sit and think about it. All right? It's really easy. It's the same increase or decrease by a percentage, but just think about the question and it will be easy to do. So it says an investor buys $15,000 worth of NCB stock, and after 6 months, the price of the stock increases by 200%, right? Find how much his NCB stocks are worth now, right? So this one is kind of easy still. Remember the percentage change was saying that it's 100 plus or minus the X percent it increases by, right? So since it increases by 200%, right? Then all you have to do is do the same thing we had in the bracket there, 100 plus the 200%, right? And then multiply it by itself, right? So that's what the percentage change is, okay? So we're going to get the same thing here. Let's do that. We're going to have 300% of itself. All right, so let's write stock worth here. So the stocks are worth 300% of itself, right? Because it increased by 200%. So we're going to get 300 over 100 multiplied by the 15,000. And this would give us the new amount for how much the stock is. So this zero would cancel this zero would cancel this zero, and we'd get 150 multiplied by 300. Cool. So 150 multiplied by 300 is actually 45,000. All right, and cool. So when you work this out, the 300 multiplied by the 150, you actually get 45,000. Okay. And if you use your calculator, that's what you're going to get. And we could multiply it out, but no need to in this case. We're just using common sense to calculate these questions. Okay. All right. So this is really just common sense, you know. You just think about it and get it done. But I don't want this to overwhelm you guys. Just try to work out more questions like these. I'm going to do more examples, and you'll get used to it. You'll get accustomed to it, you know. So we're going to do another example now. All right, guys. Hey, guys. So we're looking at another example here, the third example. And it says a banker's salary increased by 20%, and his salary is now $120,000 per month. Calculate his salary if it had increased by 40% instead of 20%. All right. So let's think about the question. They said the salary increased by 20% and his salary is now 120,000 per month, right? So let's break down that part. We're going to state his salary as X, okay? So his salary is equal to X, and we don't know what it is, right? But we can find his salary, right? it increased by 20% and it's now $120,000. So we know that X multiplied by 120 over 100, right? Which is the increase, right? Which is the same increase, the 100 plus or minus the X percent, right? Is equal to 120,000. All right, guys. So they said calculate his salary if it had increased by 40% instead of 20. So let's find X. I think the best thing to do is just find the original salary first, right? So X is equal to, we're going to divide the right side by this here. Cool. And we're going to end up with 120,000 divided by 120 over 100, right? So X is actually equal to 120,000 multiplied by, when you divide, you flip the right side, right? So it should be 100 over 120, right? And 120 can go into 120,000 1,000 times, right? So 120 goes into 120,000 1,000 times, and then you multiply that by 100 and you get 100,000. All right, guys. Cool. Awesome. All right. So the salary is equal to 100,000. So it says, what if his salary had increased by 40% instead of 20%? Right? Right. Calculate his salary if it increased by 40% instead. So to find the new salary, right, all we have to do is multiply the old salary, which is the X multiplied by 140, which is the new percentage, right, over 100. So this would be equal to 100,000 multiplied by 140 over 100. These two zeros cancel these two zeros, and 140 multiplied by 1,000 gives you 140,000. All right, guys. So it's the same concept, okay? If something increases or decreases, you just multiply it by plus or minus the amount it increases by the original amount, right? And you should get the value that you want. Okay, same thing here. Awesome. All right, guys. So let's do one more example, okay? All right, guys. So the last question for this section here, and it says a plumber buys some material for $2,000 and sells the material to a friend working on his house. He sold the material at a 50% profit in order to cover the cost of going to the store and buying the material. So it says, what is the cost price of the material? So what did it originally cost, even though you sold it for $2,000? All right. Okay, so we're gonna write out an equation again. The cost price, right, multiplied by, remember you sold it at a 50% profit. So remember the equation, 100 plus or minus X percent. In this case, it's plus X percent. So it's 150% of the material that should be equal to the 2,000, right? Because he sold it at a 50% profit. Cool. So to find the cost price now, we'll have to do the same thing. We'll have to divide the right side by this 150 over 100. So the cost price is equal to 2,000 divided by 150 over 100, right? So we're going to end up with 2,000 multiplied by 100 over 150. Cool. This zero cancels this zero. And you end up with 20,000 divided by 15, right? And let's just put that in our calculator. 20,000 divided by 15. And you end up with 1,333.33. And it goes on, but since it's in dollars, it's just 133.33, right? 1333.33. That's the answer. All right, guys. And if we were to multiply that by 150 and divide it by 100, we would actually get 2000. Okay. So, right, it's correct. Okay, guys. So I'm just showing you the basic equation here in terms of how you calculate an increase, or how do you find the missing item that they ask you based on what you need to calculate. All right, guys. All right, guys. So I'll see you later. All right. And have a great day. We can look at the next lecture now. All right, guys. So that's it. And I'll see you in the next lecture. And remember to do your best, and God will do the rest.